I'm Tim Kilduff, and this is Business Matters. The objective of the program is to not just talk about Hopkinton businesses, but more importantly, the people who run, operate, and own those businesses. We're lucky to have a person who is not just successful in her business, but also very, very much involved in our community, Hopkinton. And that's Kathleen Buckley, the owner-broker of Star Realty. Kathleen, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tim. I'm glad to be here.
We want to try, let's get some background and sort of paint the picture, the broad brushstroke, if you will. But we're always interested in trying to find out where people come from. Mm-hmm. Not everybody was born and raised in Hopkinton, mm-hmm. in your educational background, and then ultimately we'll move into your day-to-day business.
Okay. I'm from Colorado, actually. Born and raised in Colorado Springs. And then at 18, I moved to California and went to school at the University of California in Santa Barbara. There I met and fell in love with a Frenchman, ended up moving to France, and lived in Paris, actually, for 6 years after school. Actually had a little small business there as well, an English language business. And then my husband took a job at the MathWorks, so that brought us back to the United States, to Massachusetts. So,
you know, that's a fascinating trip. It's got to give you a rather interesting background or perspective for the business that you're in now. What'd you major in, by the way?
I majored in international relations. It was a political science major. I guess in my view, it's more of a kind of a liberal arts major. Some people took that and went into State Department work, but that was not my trajectory.
But the relationship part carries through, doesn't it?
I think that international relations degree helped me see things from a different perspective. And then, of course, living in France reinforced that. Being able to see our culture and our country the way other people see it, and then just meeting people. I mean, even now, even where we live in Massachusetts, you meet people from all over the world, and it's fascinating. I find that.
How long have you been in the real estate business in Hopkinton?
I started in real estate in 2001. I started with Century 21 here in town.
Now, there has to be a whole bunch of changes that have taken place even since 2001, but I don't even know where to begin. You know, maybe we can just talk a little bit about what some of those changes are, or have been.
That's interesting, because in 2001 the big thing was, should you get your own website? And we listened to pitches about, you know, website, and it was all really very new. And early on, I got my domain name, and of course, you know, that's just the beginning now.
You established Star Realty when?
2004.
Now that had to be that's an independent,
non-franchise.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. That had to be a decision in and of itself.
Right. I had been at Century 21, then I went over to RE/MAX Executive Realty in town as well, so I saw the example of those two different models. The way I was operating at RE/MAX, and remember, real estate agents are all independent contractors. So even though they don't feel like it sometimes, they really are their own individual businesses. Now, when I went to RE/MAX, it was more, that was a model more like that. So I had, for example, I had overhead that I was paying every month. Whether you make a sale or not, you're paying this overhead. So as the business was growing, I realized that I would have a competitive advantage, excuse me, I would have a competitive advantage by offering a choice outside of the RE/MAX model. I didn't really look into joining any kind of franchise at the time, because for what I wanted to do in my business, I saw a path that didn't require, I saw no advantage to paying even 8% of what I was earning. I would rather take that 8% and invest it in, you know, supporting the Hopkinton Education Foundation or supporting Little League teams, keeping that money local, I thought was a better return on my investment than paying franchise fees to a national.
Do you focus all your attention? Maybe a better way to ask it is how much of your attention is focused on Hopkinton, and do you go outside the borders?
I do. I do business, Auburn, Andover, but those are rare. I still do most of my business in Hopkinton. I don't sponsor any number of organizations outside of Hopkinton. I really do focus those dollars in town, and that's a choice. It has been a choice that has cost me in the past. I had an office, for example, a Milford Upton office for a spell. Yep. And understandably, those agents said, well, why aren't you sponsoring the, our education foundation? And it wasn't my business model. And the beautiful thing about owning your own business is you do what you want and you spend your money the way you want to.
Well, we'll come back and talk about the community involvement piece because I think that's really critical. Fair to say this is a competitive business, but as you pointed out before we started, in most businesses are competitive, but as an outsider, it appears that this is more so than most businesses.
I agree, and I agree it is. The beautiful thing about real estate is that you can have all kinds of different people. I mean, think of the different agents that you know. Even the agents within my firm. All kinds of different agents with different personalities and different styles. And many different personality types can be successful in the business because different people like to work with people they like.
Right.
So there's room for all those people.
Does it get a little edgy every so often?
Well, yeah. If you're in competition, for example, a person is considering selling their home. And they call in 3 different real estate agents to interview them and choose one that they believe will be a good fit, will be the best to sell their home. So sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And of course you want to win all the time. No one likes rejection in any form, right?
But because of the way the system is set up, that doesn't limit you. Somebody has a contract with a seller. That doesn't mean you don't. A lot of people, I think, have the preconceived notion that they sign a contract and that's it. But that doesn't stop you from going out and literally marketing that house and bringing in buyers.
Right. I mean, this is in fact what I say to people. If someone calls me and say, Kathleen, thank you for coming. We really appreciated your presentation. We've decided that so-and-so is a better fit for us. So, of course, that hurts. But I say, I understand. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I will be the one to bring the buyer and sell the house, because there can be, with the way we cooperate in the real estate industry, is that regardless of who has the listing, any agent can bring a buyer and participate in the sale.
Buyer, seller, 2 different sides of the deal.
Buyer's agent, seller's agent, right?
Gotta have different skill sets, depending on who you're representing and what role you play.
Right. It does feel like 2 very different jobs. I would say that with the listing, there's a certain body of work that you're doing to market the property. There's a tremendous amount of workload up front in the beginning, and then as needed. There's a tremendous amount up front, then as showings come, you'll have an offer, flurry of activity, home inspection, and then there's a little bit of a lull again as you cruise into the landing process. With buyers, it's much more demanding on your time in the sense that you have no control. If a house hits the market that's suitable to your buyers, bam, you have to go. And with the market turning as it is now, you better go sooner rather than later and get your hat in the ring and do the best you can to get the buyers the property they want.
Challenges, daily challenges. And let's divide that into the actual art of the deal, but also you have agents. There's got to be probably ongoing education and others. So in terms of the challenges in just dealing with buyers and sellers, what pops out?
Well, of course, there are lots of details, important details that go along with the transaction, but that's really not the most difficult part to manage. What's trickiest to manage is the emotional charge that comes with these transactions, because there is a huge amount of money at stake. This is a very important financial transaction. And it's very often an emotional experience as well. These are people's homes we're talking about. This is where they've raised their family or where they're going to raise their family. So there's nothing like that security of home. I know I was pondering that when we were hunkered down for Hurricane Sandy recently, thinking, I'm so grateful to feel so safe and protected in my home, have my children under this roof with me. So it's understandable that people get emotional. There's a lot of money at stake. There's a certain pride. So you've got a seller, for example, who has taken tremendous good care of their home and maybe doesn't feel appreciated by a buyer who submits what the seller considers too low of an offer. So they get a little bit offended, which is understandable as well. So that's the tricky part, to try to help people stay focused on the business transaction at hand, and so that their long-term best interest can be served.
Now there's another side. That's the business side of it, and we didn't even talk about that yet. And that is running an office. There's that, and then there's the relationship with agents.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to start my own business. I enjoyed that challenge. It's important for me to stay challenged. So I was fortunate to be reasonably successful very early on. And so having my own office and the challenge of starting my own company and then having agents and making it all run and work is what keeps me going. I love it.
Social media. That's got to be a huge factor. That's changed since you started in the business.
Right.
How do you keep, and I also assume that helps you. It appears that your business is a 24/7 business.
You know, I guess you're right. Different people, different agents, different people have different ways of managing that. But yes, especially with something like Facebook, it's hard to overstate how fabulous Facebook is for a real estate agent, because the key, as you point out, competitive industry. I learned from a very wise man in the business by the name of Chuck Joseph, the key to, and this is common knowledge in real estate, it's important for you to stay top of mind with clients or prospective clients. So I know people from my children's friends, parents, people I work with around town for other reasons. It's important that they know I'm in the business, and that when they have a real estate need, they're buying, they're selling, they know someone who needs to do that, bam, who do they think of? You want them to think of you. You always want to be associated with that, and ideally positively associated with that. Facebook is a beautiful thing for that, because you no longer have to be one-on-one. I'm one on however many friends I have in that. Now, it's tricky because people also, they don't go on Facebook to be sold anything.
Right.
So you don't want to be annoying.
So how do you make that interesting?
Well, I like to share things that I appreciated about the business. In fact, and I don't often post on my personal page about real estate. Every now and then I will. But sometimes, I mean, I was just feeling great. working for some buyers and presenting an offer yesterday, and I shared on Facebook that it's still such a thrill. You still get so amped presenting an offer. So I mean, little things like that you share.
Human side.
Yeah.
Human side.
Yeah.
Human interest.
Yeah.
Works, doesn't it?
Well, and again, I don't do it in a manipulative kind of way.
Right. Right.
I try to be, I just try to be myself. That's all.
How do you link all that in now? Obviously, websites are that's old stuff.
Right.
But
well,
still,
websites. So you're right that the business, and that's another thing I love about it. It continues to change and evolve, and it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. We'll have new tools all the time. So, this idea that blogging giving consumers content that they're interested in, to bring them to you, to give them value before they even hire you, in the form of information and also exposure. So adding a blog, embedding videos, using video effectively to sell houses, to sell the town, give consumers the information that they want. It's not easy buying a house in Massachusetts for the reason that the communities are so small.
Right.
In Colorado, you would search in all of Metro Colorado Springs. In Massachusetts, every town, or nearly so, has their own school district. They're all very different communities. It's hard to know where to look. Back when I was buying, Tim, when I was looking to buy a house in Massachusetts, what year are we talking about? 1996. I'm over in France, right? I had someone send me the Boston Globe, and I'm looking in the newspaper at names of towns, Braintree, Needham. So hard to get information about these areas, and where I have no idea where I want to live. All I know is where my husband's job is, and trying to find, school districts and whatnot. So much easier now to do searches on the internet. And if someone can do a search on the internet and find a video on my website about the town of Hopkinton, at least it gives them a flavor.
That's a whole nother now discussion, because all these I absolutely agree with you about the size of the communities in New England. I totally agree, and a lot of people don't get that. And I'm glad to hear you say that. But that when you have access, you also have access to town websites, and we. The idea is not to pick apart people's websites, but the fact of the matter is those pieces become important, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are people, your experience over the last few years, both in buying and selling, if you had to talk about Hopkinton's image and how it's perceived?
Hopkinton's reputation continues to grow. It has a very good, it's definitely a destination town. I think a lot of that comes from these high rankings we've been getting on national scores and state scores for our high school notably. And people want schools, that nothing new there. When I was looking in 1996, what mattered to me were the quality of the schools. But then there's a trade-off, all right? So schools in Weston may perform better, all right, on criteria, but I'm not comfortable living in Weston in what I could afford when I went to purchase. So there's that trade-off. And what we have in Hopkinton, that even the town that I first lived in Southborough, I ended up in Hopkinton because we have more neighborhoods to choose from. We're fortunate in that regard. We have big neighborhoods, small neighborhoods, all over town, and no one area of town that's considered better than others. We have nice neighborhoods scattered all over. So people look for schools, they look for neighborhoods in the lifestyle that they want to lead in raising their children, and we're still attracting those children. We attract relocation buyers, people moving here to take jobs from anywhere in the country. We attract people who I call the move out west buyers. So they went to school in Boston. They're young couples starting their
Right.
life. They move out to buy the home and raise a family. And then once people are in, they got into Hopkinton, however they did, they want to move up. They want to stay in town. So those are the three drivers of demand for housing in Hopkinton.
Location, location, location too, right?
Absolutely.
The business expansion in companies like, and there's a I think you would agree, there's a pretty good balance here. We could use a little more expansion on the industrial base, but you have companies like PerkinElmer that are scheduled to bring in, upwards of 200 very high level jobs. That's got to add to the excitement of your business.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I love to hear that news. I love to hear new businesses growing in town because, of course, people, when they move, well, nobody wants a long commute that I know of.
Right.
So if they can find suitable housing right here in the same town where they're working, that's ideal.
If you were, if there were elements and things that you would recommend Hopkinton look at in terms of moving towards the future, what pops out? That's almost like a loaded question, but to me, it appears that we as a community could use more quote unquote services, for example.
Maybe. I think the biggest damper on quality of life is traffic.
Yeah.
I drive home from my office up 85, and when that train lets out, there's a long line of cars coming down that one-lane road. It's that intersection, the center of town, I see that as a damper on our potential.
I don't disagree, and it's only going to get worse because, as you know, the communities to the west of us are growing. There's more and more traffic through the center of town. So you would agree then that I'm not so sure downtown revitalization is the right word, but that's a critical pressure point.
Oh, yes. I would like to see people driving downtown when they want to go downtown. If they're only in that intersection to pass through, it seems to me like we should find a better way to pass them through.
I like that. I like that. You're involved in several activities in the community, and I want to just sort of end with focusing on that. One, why do you do it? Probably pretty obvious, but then you've made some substantial commitments to a couple of those organizations.
Well, yes, because I came here for the schools. I think the schools are extremely important, for the country as a whole. So I invest money in education. That's important to me. And even all the local things, HCAM, what a fabulous resource we have in this television station, especially now that they're on Facebook. Because I have to confess, I don't usually turn on the HCAM television. I don't watch a lot of television anyway, but I believe that this is worth the investment, that the schools are worth the investment, that there are many things. Some people invest more heavily in the arts. That's not my thing. I do it because it's my values. I believe in it, and I want to give back to the community that has given me so much success and enjoyment in my life. And
you've made a rather substantial investment in the Education Foundation. How'd you get to that point?
It started, let's see, I attended some board meetings of the Education Foundation early on. This was 2003, maybe. I was impressed with the people that were running that organization. And I was impressed with the programs that came out of it. The whole idea, to me, is ingenious. These are the teachers in front of our students every day. they have ideas about how to enrich that learning experience. What better motivator than to let them run with that idea? Try it out. I know I enjoy a challenge and new things in my job. Teachers certainly do as well. Give them the money to do it. And what do? They share that enthusiasm and that joy of learning with our children. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a win-win.
Well, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Well, I got to tell you, I'm impressed with, one, your grasp of the business, obviously, and two, your understanding of the community, which is critical. And then, and most importantly, the fact that you're willing to invest. So we appreciate that.
My pleasure.
This is an example of the kind of quality people that are out representing Hopkinton on a day-to-day basis. The real estate business, many people would agree that this is a 24/7 business, and I think we're lucky to have people like Kathleen Buckley out, not just providing services in the real estate business, but promoting Hopkinton.
Hello, welcome to HCAM Insights. Did you know that Hopkinton's television station has given you the ability to create an account on our website, hcam.tv? With an account, you can comment on articles, submit photos for the homepage slideshow, and lots of new features I haven't had time to set up yet. But if you create an account, you'll be the first to know when I do. So don't just be a consumer of Hopkinton, be a participant. I didn't think that tagline would work.